Are your kids and students just standing there during worship? Are they unsure of what to do and a little bored? Are you wondering how you might create a worship culture where they could really encounter God? It is possible, and I'm going to share some key principles and practical steps that will help you lead them into powerful, distraction-free worship. Let's go. Hey everybody, welcome to the Brent Parsley Next Gen Leader Podcast. My name is Brent, and I hope that today's episode helps you win in Next Gen ministry. I want to help you with the how of Next Gen ministry so that you can do what matters most. And today, we're going to dive into one of the three legs of our Next Gen ministry tripod. We're going to talk all about worship. Worship should be, and I would say it has to be, a foundational building block of how we do kids and student ministry. But that is not always easy. So if you find this podcast to be helpful, would you please subscribe, give it a like, or jump in the comments section at YouTube, or leave a review on Apple Podcasts or your podcast app of choice. That would be amazing. And if you share it with a student pastor, a kids pastor, or some other next-gen leader that you know, you might be a part of helping to get some hopefully helpful coaching and training out to some more great leaders that are just like you. All right, well, worship is essential in next-gen ministry, and that's because worship is essential as a follower of Jesus. You already know that worship is what we do. We all worship something or some things, and we often end up giving our devotion to things that don't really have a whole lot of value. And so teaching kids and students how to worship God is essential. Diverting their attention away from the worship of stuff or other people and pointing it towards the only one who really matters. And by the way, worship is a really big category, right? Worship is more than music and song, and worship should be the overall way that we live our life in service to King Jesus. But for today's purpose, we're going to focus primarily on worship in our services with music. So, a few reasons why we should take this worship thing more seriously. The first is because God is worthy of our worship. Like, that's it. One of the primary reasons that we gather as Christians is to worship God. Church can sometimes turn into this consumer-driven, what can I get out of this for me kind of a thing, but that's not what it's for. The church gathers to worship the God who is worthy, period. So we want kids and students to learn that lesson right up front, learn it early, so they don't grow up with a misunderstanding of the church and why they should gather for the rest of their lives. The second reason that this is important is because we were created to worship. Isaiah 43:21 says, "The people I formed for myself, that they may proclaim my praise." And if you read the Psalms, of course, they're full of instruction on how we should praise. Like, this is just part of who you are. And it's who our kids and students are also created to be. But they don't get that automatically. And that's partly because there's so many other things that are vying for attention. So we have to teach them. Another reason that I think is so valuable is because worship is the instant right sizing of us. So many students struggle with insecurity growing up. It's just part of the process of maturing, but here's the thing, you can't come into worship feeling like you're a worm and stay that way, because you realize how much God loves you and how important you are to him and what he's done for you in Jesus. Like, you're not a worm, you're far from it. Conversely, you can't come into worship thinking like you're God's gift to everybody and just stay that way, because in God's presence, it reveals the awe that you should have of God so that you realize, oh, how small I really am, but also fully loved. Like, these are big ideas that happen on the regular in worship that we want our kids and students to be able to find. Another reason is because students need to be familiar with God's presence. Like, the presence of God is what separates us from all the other people on the earth. It's in God's presence that we become open, and he reaches in and he changes, he adds things or extracts things from our lives. It's where we hear him and he guides us. So I think these are the reasons why it's really important, and we need to dig in and create a worship culture. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to hit some real practical things to help make worship strong in your ministry and give students the opportunity to grow in God's presence. Look, here's the thing. My background is non-denominational and charismatic primarily, and maybe a scotch of Pentecostal way back there somewhere. So what I'm suggesting, it may be different for your background or tradition or context, but I am confident there'll be some principles here that will help you. And we're not going to get real crazy or anything, all right? So here are some practical ways to instill and grow a worship culture in your ministry. The first thing is to remember that you are the primary worship leader. And you may be like, no, man, I actually got a great worship leader. And that's awesome if you do. But as the leader of your particular group or ministry, whether it be kids or students, as the leader of that ministry, you are also the lead worshiper. So you got to model worship for them. I've always tried to position myself right up front so that every kid or every student can see me there with my hands lifted up in worship. Oh, I get it. So you just want to be seen by men. No, that's not what I'm doing. Well, doesn't Jesus have something to say? But yeah, he does. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about leading in worship from my seat and my role. I want to model worship so that kids and students can see it, see what it looks like, and feel like they're invited to join in. I give them permission with my action. I've always said that what you do in moderation, they're going to do to excess. So whatever you do in moderation, whether it's good or bad, they're going to have a tendency to take it to excess. They'll do more. So worship with everything you've got, let them see you, and encourage them to go beyond you. You are the lead worshiper, and it's your responsibility to create and steward the worship culture in your group. No doubt, your culture, your church culture, it matters too. Like your lead pastor matters, it all matters. And hopefully you're not having to create this thing on your own, but you have a good worship culture in your church. We had a really strong worship culture in Colorado, and that's continued in our church in Austin. The worship leader in Colorado, who happened to be my brother, had this philosophy of making sure that generations were represented on the stage in worship on Sundays. Kind of called it, I think, the family worship table. So we had a DJ named Luke that would sometimes play with us on Wednesday nights. Yes, we had a live DJ as part of our worship band, and that was my buddy John's doing. He was incredible. John was incredible. Luke was incredible. But my brother would then have my worship leader, John, and the DJ, Luke, play on the Sunday morning stage. And that made my life so much easier. It meant that students in our ministry looked up and said, hey, those are my guys. The church wants them here, so I belong here. And it contributed greatly to the culture of young people in worship on Sunday, which then added to the culture of worship on Wednesday. The point is, lead in worship and you'll be well on your way. Maybe you don't have a worship leader. The principle remains the same. Be the lead worshiper. Having said all of that, worship may not be the best thing for your group right now. What I mean is worship in the traditional sense, a band and 3 songs, stuff like that. Maybe you don't have any of that. So it seems like, well, man, worship's out for us. Well, maybe it's not best right now, but let's work towards it. And here's what I would suggest, because this is where lots of us find ourselves. Start with one song from a playlist. Tell your group, hey, everybody, we're going to go in and we're going to worship God because he's worthy, and that's what we're created to do. Play the one song, maybe lower the lights a little bit, play the song pretty loud in case anybody feels like singing, and then you lift your hands, close your eyes, and just worship your face off. When it's over, you pray, thank God, and continue on with your night. As you continue to do this and they start to get comfortable, then you can maybe move to 2 songs. Maybe it's one that's fast or medium fast, and maybe you can work towards one that's slow. Do the same things. Play it loud, lower the lights a bit, worship God, and encourage them to put their hands out in their laps. Maybe lift them high if they feel comfortable with that. You stand up sometimes, maybe pace around the room a little bit, lead them into worship. And over time, you might be surprised how they join you. And as you continue, pray about and find somebody that can then play a guitar. And I would suggest you find somebody, you just start them once a month and say, hey, let's see how it goes. Set clear expectations for what you're looking for and check in on them regularly. If it's going great, add another. So, hey, how about we do 2 times a month where you're leading on guitar and then we have kind of a playlist on the other nights. Most importantly, you keep worshiping. But don't launch it too soon. Maybe they just started playing guitar or they started playing keys or something. Take a little time, man. Make sure they're really good and they're ready, and that won't become a distraction. And then as they start to get comfortable, you can start to add instruments as you are able. But you gotta add the right instruments. Don't have a guitar player and then have somebody who plays a saxophone and add the saxophone to the guitar. You got a 2-piece, it's a guitar and a saxophone. It's not gonna be good. Best practice would be add in a cajon or something, some sort of drum. Then maybe you get to add some keys. Then you get to add a small drum kit. Maybe you add some keys for a pad or something. Just starting to put the pieces right. Take time, don't go too soon. Another thing is make sure that your tech is right. And you should test it all every night. When you start, you might just want to use your phone to play something from Spotify or Apple Music. That's great. Then make a playlist so that both songs that you put in are back to back and they're ready to be played. You're not searching anywhere. I like Apple Music with lyrics. It looks real good. It's an easy way. You could actually put it on screen for those lyrics so people can follow along and sing. So you could AirPlay the lyrics from Apple Music to your phone, to a TV or to use an Apple TV to do it. Show your playlist on the screen. Some people like to use YouTube videos. All of those are good options. But one big thing that will really help you is, and people kind of look over this, plan transitions. Nothing takes us out of a worshipful environment like fumbling over songs or playing the wrong thing or getting a call or having tested it, not tested it so it just doesn't work. Like all that stuff's a mess. So practice transitioning from song to song. Maybe pray in between. Practice how you're going to close it out. Well, Brent, that sounds like a show. No, I don't want you to put on a show. But what we're doing is trying to eliminate distractions and lead them to the presence of Jesus in worship. You already know, kids and students get distracted quick, so they don't need help, so go ahead and practice. Another thing is make sure that your seating is right. I'll be honest, chairs in a circle is tough sometimes. Everybody's looking at each other and it feels a little like an AA meeting and you feel nervous to sing because you're staring at somebody and you're just singing in their face. Rows is a lot easier to deal with, but not great for small groups. More on that later, but I would recommend that you make space to move around and encourage them to do that. I kind of like imperfect circles for smaller groups, or maybe like a half circle around a stool. Maybe some other people kind of clumped up a bit behind, like it's a little imperfect and it kind of feels organic and natural. And then in worship, encourage them to get out of those seats and walk around, to pace a little, to pray, to lift up their hands, to have space, to kneel. Again, you're modeling all of it. Show them how and invite them to join you. Look, again, I've been non-denominational my whole life. Pentecostal charismatic history. So this may not be at all what you're used to, but even encouraging them to just spread out a little bit and have some time with the Lord might be helpful. Smaller groups, it gets a little harder to do some of these things. Larger groups are easier, but I just tell you can absolutely do it, especially if you put some of this stuff into practice. Another thing to do to really help is to make it loud. We want it to be loud enough so that you can't hear the person next to you singing. Like that's an awkward thing that happens and you feel insecure. It just frees everybody up. So you don't want it so loud that you're going to get emails from parents the next day, but somewhere just under that, somewhere right under email from parents. So nobody's hearing gets damaged and you don't get any emails. Another thing is just make it comfortably dark. Not so dark that now you've got some other problems happening in the room, but comfortably dark so that attention gets taken away from other people a little bit and they have more opportunity to kind of narrow in and focus in on Jesus. I'm just telling you, full fluorescent lighting is rough. Get some lamps, try to make it comfortable, maybe even a little vibey without putting on a show. It might help you. And if it's happening now, it's starting to grow and they're getting comfortable and you're starting to get some musicians in, well, let's talk about a few things as you start into looking at building a worship band. Here's the first and most important thing. Character matters more than talent, but talent matters too. Just having good character is not enough to put them on stage. It is the most important thing, so interview them. Talent will get you there, but character is what's going to keep you there. So know their life. Ask them why they want to lead worship. Do all the things, do your due diligence, but set your standards high too. Don't just throw somebody up there because they said they can play guitar. Have somebody who does play guitar help you with the interview process and listen to them and just be honest about it as you go through it. Set very clear expectations for what you expect, how often they should lead, what that looks like, all the details, and agree on a trial period. Like I would say, hey, let's go for the next 3 months, maybe 2 times a month, and then we'll get together after that to evaluate how it's going for both of us. Is it going good for you? Is it going good for me and the group? And don't leave them alone during that time, but give them a little feedback and coach them during those 3 months so they can grow and you can see how they handle feedback too. And once the 3 months is over, meet up again, talk about your decision. Say, hey, I think we're going to continue and let's add another week to it. Let's go another month and just see. I think we're growing. Let's give it a little more time and be honest. If it just hasn't worked out, hey, let's help you find another place to serve. We love and appreciate you. Yeah, that's scary, but it's helpful to them, helpful to your group, and you can do it. And here's my hot take for the episode. Don't use a student worship team. I know. That's heresy in many of our circles. It's almost heresy in my circles. I am all for students leading in ministry. Everywhere possible, as often as possible, please hear me. So why not have a student-led worship team? It's because I am interested most in removing distractions from worship, because that's the fastest way to engage students and teach them how to be in God's presence. If your band is young and inexperienced and it's not playing well together and people are giggling and you're stopping and saying, oh, sorry guys, students are going to have a hard time focusing in on Jesus, and that's the thing that matters most. So you got to prioritize it. Instead, I would integrate students one at a time into your experienced adult worship team. Get kids up to speed, then add another student into the mix. In the meantime, invite all of them to your worship rehearsals and get them playing there. Maybe have them start playing in the kids ministry to get some reps in, and then move them up into students and hopefully get them into the adult service as well. Now we're talking. As they grow, you could end up with a powerful and experienced student worship team. And man, I love that, and so do you. One of the great things about being a Next Gen pastor is that you get to oversee the formation of kids and students over the years. And the worship culture of your church should be one of the primary things that you're investing in. And so let's talk about the formation through the different age groups really quick before we get out of here. Most kids ministries that I know, they use videos for worship, right? And that's great. Here's how we think about worship in our kids ministry right now. In our nursery, we have worship music playing when parents are dropping their babies off. There's some soft lullaby worship music playing. Then over the course of the morning, we're going to play one song. We're going to have leaders sing if they can, kind of have just a brief little cute worship moment with those kids. No pressure. Nobody's expecting anybody to lift their hands. Just show and model worship with that one little song. Then in preschool, we use the YouVersion for Kids curriculum. So it's incredible. Teaches kids basic Bible stories, and they have a couple songs with fun but simple motions. And they're learning how to sing, and they're learning how to worship biblically by lifting hands or clapping or dancing. And that's what's important. We're teaching the early forms of worship that you find in the scriptures. Then in our elementary group, as they continue to grow up, we use video there too. Live is awesome if you have the capability, but everybody can use video, and there are some amazing resources. Actually, we use curriculum from Amazing Kids, and I'm just telling you, it's awesome. They've got 2 songs, one fast, typically one slow, very simple motions that teach clapping, lifting hands, again, for formational worship actions from the scriptures. The slow songs have even more simplified motions with lifted hands. It is really, really, really good. It's amazing.kids if you want to go check it out. I am not affiliated, but I just believe in them and in what they're doing, and they've been really great for our elementary group. Then once you get to middle and high school, now it's starting to get super fun, because live, if possible, is the way to go here, but you can use video, I think, if necessary. We've kind of talked about how to do that. But in my opinion, worship for these groups is mostly the same, okay? It's weighted a little bit, maybe a little bit faster songs, maybe a little shorter period of time in middle school, but I believe that we should model worship and call middle school kids up a little higher, which is why I say I don't put a whole lot of difference in this, even though middle schoolers do have unique needs from high schoolers. In high school, worship should be all in. I think often as you can. Go long, go deep, challenge them to worship with all of their life and all of their bodies. Have full-on worship nights where that's all you're going to do, and worship and pray together and grow that worship culture and watch those students' lives grow. So at the end of the day, what should we really do with all of this? Well, there's a few things. Number one, be a worshiper yourself. Make the worship of God a part of your everyday, a part of your devotional time, a part of your entire life. Jesus taught us to recognize God's name as holy early on when he taught us to pray in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Recognize it as holy. So practice this. Like, be on time to Sunday morning service and worship there. Be a worshiper of God yourself, in private and corporately. Second thing is, model worship in front of your students. We've talked about this extensively, but stand up front and lead. Stand up, close your eyes, lift your hands to the playlist or to the live worship. Stand up, lift your hands, sing out loud, let everybody see you. You're like, man, I don't want to be prideful though. I don't want to be that way. Well, good. Wrestle with that pride and land on the side of leadership responsibility. That's what you're here for. So don't be late to the worship set because you're doing something else. Don't do anything else. Don't just stand there and wonder when it's going to get over so you can get up and preach or do the lesson. lead and model the way that you want them to worship, and encourage every one of your volunteers to do it as well. Third, you should teach on worship. What is worship from the scriptures? Why do we lift our hands? Does God actually need our worship? Is he like some kind of egomaniac that we got to worship him? Teach kids what it means to really worship from the scriptures. Give them context and theology around what we're doing. And then fourth and finally, I just want to encourage you to keep working on your worship culture. Always. And here's why you can do it. Because worship isn't based on your feelings. Worship is based on God's goodness, and that never changes. So don't ever stop worshiping, and keep working always to grow in worship and to grow the culture of worship in your church and in your ministry. Evaluate it, get some feedback on it, make adjustments to it as you go, and grow the culture of worship and the presence of God, and see how that changes the lives of kids and students in your ministry. Hey, if this was helpful in any way, subscribe. If you're on YouTube, drop a comment. If you think it's good enough, drop a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. That really helps, and I'd be grateful. And share it with a student pastor, a kids pastor, or another Next Gen pastor that you know. Be a part of getting some hopefully helpful coaching and training into their hands too. As always, if you want to talk, you can email me at brent@brentparsley.me or DM me at Brent Parsley on Instagram. Until next episode, I hope that today helps you win in Next Gen ministry.